Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being patient with us. You know, we are working from new camera equipment, and so we had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning, but here we are. This is Emily Miller coming to you with Facebook Live from beadshopdotcom. I also have Grace doing a wonderful job of directing and camera work behind the camera, and Brandon standing by to help us out. Do you guys want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Sorry about that this morning. We were trying all this other stuff out, and we had
new technology
default.
always takes a little bit of time to kind of get used to, right?
Totally.
So I have a couple things to do of housekeeping before we get on to Beaded Berry Chain, and they're very brief. So I wanted to do a little shout out to Susan in Calgary. I have a photo here. Let me get it, minimize one screen and get a big one up here.
Here we go.
I've got a couple of different ones for you. She sent us some pictures of crocheted chain, bead crochet.
Awesome.
Right? Is that a nice one? And
These are beautiful colors.
I know. She picked out some great colors. I love it. So this looks like one she picked from her stash. Let me go get the other picture too. There's another one. Here we go. It's a very bead shop inspired photo, I think, don't you? Lovely button. And looks like she used a whole button instead of a shank button. That's very cool. And did you notice at the end where she crocheted some beads into the loop? And that was kind of one of the last little tweaks that we were adding to this, is that as an option, you could actually use a small bead and bead a bead in every stitch to make the loop, to make it look a little beefier at that point.
Sorry,
Sure.
Emily. We're getting a lot of comments on the full screen right now, and I'm gonna turn you sideways again to see if that helps, but then people say you look sideways, so I'm not really sure
Still technical difficulties.
how to fix this problem, everyone. I'm sorry. Maybe today we're just gonna have to
Go full screen.
Yeah, because as soon as it does it, it goes sideways.
yeah, go sideways.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Sorry,
know.
everyone.
Well, technical difficulties abound. We will overcome. Okay? So, great to show you those little pieces. You know, I also had an email regarding inspiration for colors, and someone had used illustration from the outside of a tissue box for inspiration for a color palette. I have to say, that's not the first time I've heard that, and I've done it myself. So, you know, look around for your inspiration, you know, magazines, books, photographs, nature, all those things, but don't even, forget the very mundane tissue box sitting next to you, keeping you company. Okay?
Drea suggested you check the screen lock. Maybe it's locked to.
I'm not sure if I can go live.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
All right.
Sorry, just
on
let
we go. Kate, of course, is off to Milwaukee, and I believe she's watching us from the airport in San Francisco. So she's about to get on a plane to head to Bead and Button Show, which is a great event to go to, and I hope you all get the chance to do it sometime. It is a lot of fun. There's tons of classes, and there's, of course, the show floor, and meet the teachers, and lots of bead events going on all around the city. So it's a lot of fun, and I hope Kate has a great time. Kate, and good classes, of course. Break a leg. I know you'll do fine. All your boxes got there, so you're good.
yeah, she had a
She had a
I'm
little
gonna
box
go
adventure.
like this again. And wait 1 second, Emily. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's fine.
I changed it. So can you see if that one works, Brandon? Still
there's
doesn't,
a little
right?
bit of a delay, so let's see.
Still
nope,
sideways.
Still sideways.
Sorry, everyone.
Sorry, everybody. And hey, Janice, I know you're in your new digs, and I hope everything went well with your trip. Hi to Eli, in case I don't forget for later, but that way he can see us at least online. I can't wait to meet you someday, Eli. I'm really looking forward to it. So, we're about to get into doing some beaded berry chain. We have 4 color palettes to work from. I have them laid out for us to take a look at them, both made up and choices of colors that you might choose for these with the threads too. We have, starting over here, we have Chloe, which is a lovely green and turquoisey palette. Misty, which is, as you might expect, a little bit misty. So sunrise over San Francisco Bay, perhaps, maybe was the inspiration for that one. Bella has got lots of hot pink and purple, so I'm seeing a Moulin Rouge dancer here in a great outfit. And Abigail, soft pinks and some color-lined beads, which is one of my favorites. These ones that are very, very glossy, and they have the color on the inside. And then the 2 smaller beads, the 2 size 11s, are both matte, which gives a very nice soft finish again. And so that's what these are as they look made up. And here are again, Chloe, Misty, Bella, and Abigail. Quite pretty. I'm going to work today on a new Chloe. I think it's a little bit darker colors. It's a little easier to see and online for you. And I also have some samples that I'm doing in black and white with red thread, which I think also will be really easy to see. And it's a great kind of a contrasty way to go. Still sideways, Brandon?
It's sideways. The whole thing is sideways?
Well, right now.
Darn. Sorry, guys. We're, again, technical issues, but we'll try and keep going along here. And hopefully we'll get it squared away. So this beaded berry stitch is really an easy one. And we're going to use some KO thread and a size 12 beading needle, which is kind of a average size beading needle these days. 10s and 12s are probably your most common that you might encounter. And I really like the KO thread. It has a little bit of a cross between wiry and drapey kind of feel to it, and it doesn't seem to wear poorly, so I'm really kind of excited to work more with that. It's got a nice finish to it. You know, if you feel like your thread gets tangly pretty easily, try a little beeswax on your thread, and I do just a modest amount of beeswax. I don't really glob it on there. Once I get my needle and thread threaded, I'll go ahead and just run it over like a beeswax block. We sell these if you need them. They're pretty easy to come by, and they last for a good long time, so that's kind of nice. Size 12 beading needles are fairly fine. Size 10 is the next size up, so they're bigger. Using a 12 today is going to be important because we're going to pass through our beads a bunch of times. One of the things you'll find with seed beads is the hole can vary some, and there's really two major manufacturers in the world today. Beads made in Japan, which is what we carry, and beads made in the Czech Republic. And Japanese beads tend to be a little bit squarer in shape, with a little bit more of a crisp edge to it. A delica bead or a cylinder bead is the epitome of that. Czech Republic beads tend to be a little bit more donutty, and you'll notice that difference sometimes with the beads when you work with them. Czech Republic beads also tend to have a smaller hole. So that smaller hole can sometimes block up with thread if you're making lots of passes. Today we're going to make 6 passes at least through every size 8 bead. So a lot of thread's going to be in the middle of that bead. How are we doing, Gracie?
So we have a lot of comments just on the quality of the video this morning. And again, I apologize, everyone. Christine is saying that we need to start with the broadcast and the orientation. We did. But it's just, it changes every time.
Yeah.
So Kathy's saying that she's in landscape half and half or more of comments. She turns her iPod to portrait and she gets a full screen.
Oh, okay,
so
that might help
but
more.
Geeta, as always, has posted our links. So thank you for that, for the needles. And again, I'm sorry, everyone. It looks like Drea posted saying, let us know if switching to your cell phone doesn't work.
Yeah, there were some comments about some people were having some problems, so Drea was doing some
administrative behind the scenes.
Some troubleshooting.
Thank you, Drea.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. So we're using 2 different sizes of beads today, and this is a great experiment for you to play with 2 different sizes of beads and make something that's really kind of fun. We're going to use size 8/0 and size 11/0. And you'll hear people describe seed beads with different numbering qualifiers. You might hear 8/0, you might hear 8/0. I usually, if it's amongst other bead people, will just say 8. And everyone kind of seems to know what I'm talking about. Or 11. And as the numbers are getting bigger, the beads are getting smaller. So it's a lot scaled just like wire is. In the old days, you used to be able to buy a size 22 bead, which really looks like dirt with a hole in it. It's pretty small. And it was used for crocheting or knitting with beads when you made a knitted or beaded handbag. And I'll bring some in as we get up further along with seed beads, so you'll get a chance to sort of look and see what they look like, and I'll make a little comparison, and we'll see which sizes we really like to work with.
Susan asks what OT stands for.
Good question. My understanding of how this OT system comes along is that you would lay the beads in a row with the holes facing up, so you'd see all the O's, and if you had 11 of them in a row, that would equal about 1 inch. So that's my understanding of where that number comes with. Sometimes you'll see OT Sometimes you'll see it with a line and a 0 next to it, which is how we would say ought. And sometimes you'll even see it with like a degree mark. So when someone says it's 90 degrees outside, it's hot, you'll see that little 0 near the top of the number. And sometimes you'll see seed beads done that same way. But we're all talking about the same thing. Just remembering that numbering size, you know, the higher the number, smaller the bead is always the important part to kind of get a handle on.
Vanessa's using a size 18 aught, which I
Very
have
small.
never seen before in my life.
Yeah, remind me.
Feels
I think I might have some
Microsoft.
22s to show you.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
they're really, really tiny. And nowadays they're just antiques, so you can buy them occasionally. You'll find them for people who do repairing for handbags.
Art says that he thought aught was an old way of saying 0.
Yes, I agree. And it's spoken that slash with a 0 next to it. We'd say it as ought.
I see.
Yeah, but the measurement is the 11 beads to the inch, 8 beads to the inch. So as the beads are getting bigger, there's fewer and fewer per inch. So that's another way to kind of come up with that one. Okay?
Cool.
Cool. Awesome. So we're using 8s and 11s. We need 2 11s for this project, and I like having 11s that are kind of coordinating, and an 8 that's also coordinating. And really, your choice of colors is kind of up to you, and how you put them in the stitch is up to you as well. Since the kits that we've made up, or the suggested color groups that we've made up, have those 2 11s and 1 8, you're a little bit free to play with this a little. Mm-hmm. We also have a little freedom to play with how far we space out these berries that we make. So we space them out with a 5 bead grouping, and I'll show you what that looks like when we start stitching. And that little 5 bead group is really a personal choice. You can make that longer or shorter in between it, however long you wanted your bead, however much distance you want to have between your beaded berries. Okay? So I am about ready to get out a needle and thread, and Gracie, you may want to come and join me.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Just a really quick hello
Sure.
from Kate from the airport. She said internet spotty. She said looks great, ladies.
Thank
Little
you,
does
Kate.
she know. All right.
All right.
So I'm gonna come around.
Yeah, you want to come around, Grace?
Totally.
So I am going to thread a needle and thread. In fact, I'll do it a couple of times. Needles and thread, sometimes it's difficult if you have vision issues, and you may want to wear a magnifier for this. This is a good time to have that over-the-neck magnifier that we sell, or even just an extra pair of cheater glasses that you might want to slip on. I'm going to take a piece of thread. I'm going to get some green here. This is the green KO.
I think it's olive.
Olive, okay. And I'm going to pull off a piece. Now, with seed beading, I would avoid having a piece longer than about 1.5 yards. And the reason for that is that you'll end up tangling so much that you'll have to spend time untangling. And I think that just is a waste of time. It's faster and easier to change thread. Okay? I'm going to use my thread snips to clip that thread. And I find that threading this end in my needle is probably the best one. The other end has been hanging around loose for a while, and it might be a little frayed and a little bit fuzzy. So here's this great trick that I learned many, many years ago, actually, from the one of the editors at Beaded Button magazine. And I really like it a lot. And it's, instead of threading the needle, we're needling the thread. So I'm going to push the needle onto the thread rather than pushing the thread through the needle. So what I like to do is pinch the thread between my thumb and forefingers. And luckily this is a nice dark green olive that you can see.
Totally.
Sometimes I have like peach colored, and it's like my peach colored skin. It's just, you can't see anything. I'm going to pinch it till I can just see a dot of the thread. And then I'm going to push the eye of the needle down over the end of that dot. And sometimes a little sawing back and forth really helps. And look,
That's great.
it went right on, right?
Emily, I have a question.
Sure.
Vanessa says, is it true that there's a right and wrong side of the thread and needle?
Vanessa, yes and no. This particular thread is not plied or twisted. And so when you twist thread, you have 2 different twists, an S twist and a Z twist. One going one way, one going to the other. So since it's not plied, I don't really have to worry about it at this point. I tend to use the freshly cut end, and I find it's easier to thread. The needles are made by actually having a punch out the metal in the eye. So technically the eye is bigger on one side than the other. If you find yourself consistently having a hard time threading the needle on one side, turn the needle over. If you like to wet your thread, put it in your mouth and put a little spit on it, that's fine. You can do it with a little lip gloss. That sometimes makes the thread a little slippery, and it helps to thread it through. Since this is not plied, if I get one little fiber of the thread through, I can usually pull the whole thread through. If you find yourself using plied threads that are twisted together, sometimes they're a little tougher because they're tougher to thread through the needle because they're round. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and guide this needle over this thread. Now, if you were going to sew on a button on your shirt, you would absolutely use doubled thread. Most of the time in seed bead weaving, I don't use double thread, I use single thread. And in this particular case, we are going to use double thread because we need a little bit more strength in between each berry as we go along. Okay? So I'm going to use double thread, and one good thing that you might want to avoid is try not to split the thread. When we look at the hole of a bead, and we're going to put our needle through it, I'm going to take a page out of Janice's book here and draw a little bead. My drawings are never as good as hers, though. She's pretty good, right? If this is my bead, when I come to put my needle through, I'm going to, if there's already thread in this bead, and there might be thread going through several times, I'm going to try and angle my needle to go through the hole where there isn't any threads. So I'm going to maybe shoot up, or I may shoot to one side or the other to try and make that happen, okay? And this is just a practice that I've been in for many years, and so it's something I do automatically. But you can also do this.
Quick question. Naomi wants to know if you can use 8-pound Fireline and not double it.
I would still double it. And yes, you can use 8-pound Fireline. Okay. Fireline's an interesting thread. I don't use it for many things, but it is a braided thread. It's very strong. It's hard to cut cleanly. And you may find that cutting it with your flush cutters that you use for wire, a better way to cut.
I see.
Okay. So I talked about that 1.5 yards of thread, and that's about what I pulled off. And if Gracie, if you're looking at this tangly kind of mess, you know that that thread has got a little bit of a life of its own. It's got Shirley Temple curls, right? So I'm going to actually stretch the whole thread between my fingers, give it a little pull, and you see how it's relaxed. Those curls tend to give you tangles easily, and so getting that relaxed thread is kind of nice. All right. So here's another innovation that you guys might not have heard of, but you can use it in a couple of different ways. We're going to add a stopper bead to this end of this thread, and a stopper bead has one job: it's to keep your other beads from falling off the thread. It doesn't really have anything to do with your pattern, your kit, your supplies. I usually find them down in the cracks of my design board wherever I'm working. Oh, there's the stopper bead. It's a different color than the ones I'm working with. Since I'm going to be working with greens, I'm going to reach over here and have a purple stopper bead, right? It's sort of nothing like my other beads, so I know exactly what it is.
Wait, we have a question from Kate.
Sure.
She asks, she said she's may have missed it in the airport hullabaloo. Do you wax your thread?
I don't necessarily wax my thread.
Okay.
Sometimes I do, and if you find that you're having trouble with tangling, frequent tangling, this would be the time to do it. Got my needle and thread threaded, and I can run it over a block of beeswax very lightly, but I don't often wax my thread. Okay?
Got it.
So we're going to put a stopper bead again on again with the drawing. I know, Janice, I'm doing my best. All right, here's my bead, and I'm showing it you this time with the hole up, because this is the way I'm going to actually use it, right? And I'm going to bring my thread, I'm going to get a different color pen. I'm going to bring my thread, needle and thread, through the bead and back around again. So my needle and thread's going to come up from below the bead, come out. I'm going to wrap it around and go through the bead again.
That's a great illustration.
Is that okay?
That's
Can you
great.
see?
That makes a lot of sense.
So a stopper bead will actually slide back and forth on the thread, but it will be enough to keep a few beads on till we get going. And then we can take it off later before we finish off. All right?
Well, thank you again, Gita, for always posting links. Gita asks, Or no, she doesn't even ask. She says she uses wildfire beading thread for her bead weaving
mm-hmm.
project, same as Fireline.
Yeah, same as Fireline. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's another thing about seed bead people is they tend to be super loving of their personal favorites. And, you know, we can use a lot of different things. Just don't use dental floss anymore, okay, guys? Because we used to use that back in the day, and that's really old school, okay? So I'm going to pick up this stopper bead, and I'm going to put it on my velvet board. He looks kind of lonely sitting there, so let's get him on the thread. And I showed you last time we did the bead crochet how I like to pick up beads with the needle. So one way you can pick up a bead with a needle is to have, if the hole is facing up, press down on the edge of the bead that's nearest to you. See how it tips the bead up? And then I just slide my needle through. So I'm going to show you another technique in a minute for scooping up beads, which will have everyone going, oh. I'm going to slide that stopper bead down, and I'm going to leave about an 8 or so inch tail of thread. So it doesn't look like I have very much thread here. That's okay. I'm going to bring my needle again through my bead. So see how I was going above the thread, avoiding splitting that thread? Pull the needle through. And there's my stopper bead. Mm-hmm. Now, I can move that stopper bead, push it up, pull it away. I can still make adjustments, and it will absolutely come off, and I won't have to worry about it later. Okay?
Sorry, it's just because Kate never is watching, you know. So she said, "Wow, great close-up, Kay." You know, that's so. I think it's because normally she's on the other end of the camera; she doesn't see.
Nice job.
Cool.
So here's the next little bit for this particular berry. Each of these berries that we're going to make has hiding inside some size 8 seed beads. So this is just one I started. Here's the white stopper bead, see it? Mm-hmm. And the first thing I'm going to do is add 3 berries, or 3 eights. That's going to make the inside of the berry. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to build the ribs around each of those 3 eights to form that berry shape on the outside. And this is where you get to have some of your own color choices and play around with the decisions that you make, okay? So I'm going to pick up 3 size 8s. And I like to work with a small volcano, right? Big volcanoes are scary. Small volcanoes are fun. As I have that small volcano, I can actually scoot my needle through, and I'll pick up some beads. I could have done that with my eyes closed. I didn't actually have to be able to see it, right? On this first stitch, because I'm just showing you for the first time, I'm going to slide those down right to my stopper bead and then make the next stitch, which will be the ribs that are going to go on the outside. I'm going to have 6 ribs. So I'm going to repeat 6 times this little process, okay? I'm going to slide over here to some 11s, and I'm going to start with a nice green. I'm going to pick up then also a Picasso 11. This is kind of a yellow Picasso. And then another one of those size 8 beads in that turquoise color. I'm going to slide back here, get another yellow Picasso, and another green. And you see that group of 5? Mm-hmm. Each of the berry ribs is going to have one of those groups on the outside. The reason I use the 8 in the middle is so that it pushes out a little bit. If we don't use the 8, it won't be as berry-y. It'll be more barrel without the bumps. Okay? So now, I'm going to do the same move that we did with the stop bead. Familiar, right? Mm-hmm. Back through the beads. Right? I'm going to slide right through all 3 of those size 8 beads, doing my best not to split the thread. Pull it around. So just like the stop bead, this is a loop of beads on the outside of the beads. 1 rib down. Okay? So I'm going to repeat. Gracie, got questions?
No, I was just going to see if I can get a different angle on that.
All right. So I actually like to scoot that rib around to my left, and then I can kind of hold it in between my thumb and forefinger, and that frees up those 8s again. Coming through. And flip it around. 2 ribs. Lather, rinse, repeat. I know. Not the most exciting thing, right? But it actually looks really fun afterwards. So this is a great stitch to get you feeling comfortable with seed beads. It's a great stitch to feel comfortable holding your needle and thread and really having a successful time with that. Now, one thing you might notice that I do, and this is sort of a subtle change, you know, folks who do a lot of knitting and who do a lot of seed bead work, we often find that our hands get kind of tired because we grip really tightly onto tiny things. So one thing I can do to help myself here is once I use my needle to push through the beads, I can lighten up my grip. So I can make it so that I'm not holding that needle quite so firmly. And as I pull the thread away, I can actually drop the needle and pull the thread only. Since we're using doubled thread, we have a risk of having the thread get a little bit frayed or tired where it goes through the eye of the needle. So it's actually better to pull the thread instead of pulling the needle.
Few questions.
Sure.
Vanessa wants to know if you could use a 2 bead for the center, and well, actually, the second one's not a question. It's just Kate, and she says she wants to make a single one and do earrings.
Of course. You mean you may just make a one berry and have it be an earring? Of course.
But can you use it like a bugle or something?
You can use a bugle inside. It may not be quite as rounded and berry-like because those 8s are a bit thicker. So you'll get a little flatter, more barrel-shaped or tube-shaped for sure.
And Emily's asking you if these are called berries.
That's what I call them. I call them a berry. Each one is a berry. This is my own personal little invention, actually. So I've seen this same technique applied to a larger bead to make a clasp for a bracelet and to make a button-shaped or larger button-shaped bead. So here I have 5, right? I got one more rib to go. And so far I caught myself on the one mistake I was going to make. Nobody hollered out.
What was it?
Oh, I was putting the beads on in the wrong order.
I didn't notice.
This is very subtle. Going through again. There's my last rib. So it's not a bad idea occasionally also to take a little moment, making sure your doubled thread is even and you don't have a really long, short tail. Okay.
Will bugles tear a thread?
Bugles have a reputation, and certainly in the past have had fairly sharp edges. The Japanese bugles these days, especially the ones with the matte finishes, are pretty soft. And you could actually put a seed bead at either end of the bugle to give it a little cushion, and that would just make it a little longer. And you might end up using 6 beads as your berry on the outside instead of 5. But I sort of like the 5 because of that plump sort of shape that it gives you, right?
Cool.
All right, so on to the next berry. Here's where things get moving a little faster, right? So I need to do this beads in between. That's going to be 5 beads. And I've chosen to do a combination of the yellow Picasso and the turquoise Picasso.
How many?
5 altogether, 2 and 1. So very similar to what we were doing with the ribs. Okay? We can alter and vary this as much as you might like. You can have as many or as few beads in between. Okay? So now I have also the next berry to build. So that's 3 size 8s. Right? And I can also, right at the same moment, grab the first rib. This is where things kind of, the pace picks up a little bit. It's a little more, you have to remember a little more, and it's a little more exciting. Okay, so now...
Let's see the needle.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, let's just see those.
This is a little grouping.
I see.
I'll break it up. I'll break it down for you. So there's a rib right here. There's the core, the 3 beads in the middle, and there's the spacing out beads.
Got it.
Right? So that's when you do all that. Bring your thread around. I'm only going to go through my 3 8s that are in the core of my berry. Now, just like with a slider bead, you see some distance there, right? I'm just going to push down firmly, and now they're close together. And so now I can kind of carry on. Now when you're choosing your colors here, this is a place where I tend to pick colors that are somewhat grouping together. These are all in the blue-green kind of grouping. It's really nice to have something that's a bit of brighter contrast in there, just so that you can show them off. And you can choose to put those in different orders, depending on what you really want to show off. I've actually got some other samples in black and white as well to show you, which allow you to see where the bead positions are pretty clearly. And you can really vary it a whole lot when you use just a very few colors. But I could have multiple colors here. I could have one color in the core, a different color as that fat 8 on the outside, and 2 other colors, or even 2 other colors here. In fact, I have a sample. Brandon, you want to hand me the rainbow one that's there? This one uses all different colors, right? So each rib has a blue, a red, an orange, a yellow, and a green. And then there's white beads in between. And inside, I think, it's orange, right? So it's the same color as this one on the outside. But these are kind of fun because when you look sort of on one direction, they look one way. When you turn it the other way, it looks like another kind of color. It's kind of fun, huh? I like those primaries and brights. So the fewer beads you put in between, the more berries you have and then you'll need. The ones that we did for the samples for this particular project have 5 in between. So really you need about 13 berries, which is a modest amount.
For a wrist?
Yeah, for an average sized wrist, about 13 berries. Not very much. Beaded berry chain does use up a lot of thread though. I'm going to finish this one berry here, and then I'm going to make a thread change. And this is the same sort of thread change that I do with most of my seed bead changes. I do it what's called a 2-needle thread change. Okay, so let me finish this guy up, and I will be quiet, and let's see if there's any questions coming my way.
Let's see.
Or
Melanie's really in love with this. Can't wait to get going. So many gorgeous projects to start on. Thanks so much to beadshopdotcom. Lorraine says it kind of reminds her of lampwork style beads.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah, with lots of dots and things on the outside.
And I'm assuming this is Kate because it says it's from Bead Shop. Love it. Can't wait to add little bead caps to it to make a single bead for earrings. And then also that we have a project that's really great and exciting coming up in July using looming and bugles.
Oh, that's right.
And Faye is said, eek, running behind, falling behind. She is asking how many ribs. Is it 6?
6 ribs. So, here's the last rib on that berry. I think I'll just get started on building one more, and then I'll change over and do a thread change for you.
So, I have a question for you, Emily. You are creating these berries and creating the chain, and I know you're going to get to this because there's a bead stopper. But could you, in theory, like start anywhere in your, like if you want to start in the middle, could you start in the middle and finish one side and then go back and start on the other side?
That's a thought I had never had, but yes, technically you could.
Because you could just add thread to it.
Right, you can add thread going in either direction, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So I left a fairly long tail, and I'm going to use that for my clasp. Right.
Okay.
And I think it's a little easier to have it all built into one. Certainly speeds the process along. And I'm going to use one of the berries as the button for the clasp. So you don't even have to have a clasp for this. But there is a sample that I have that has a clasp on it. It's that yellow one. There you go. Yep.
And the thread that you're using is KO.
Yes. Yeah. So this sample actually is a necklace, and it actually has a hook and eye clasp on it, a nice wire clasp. And I built just a little loop to contain each end of the clasp. So that's a nice way to finish that off. And you could use any clasp, really, at this point, you know.
Cool. That looks really nice, actually, with the clasp. I didn't see that until just now.
Yeah, and that's another pretty little color combo, a little subtler color combo. Okay.
I'm sorry, really quick. Christine missed the beginning. What size are these beads? 11/aughts and 8/aughts?
Correct. 11/aughts and 8/aughts, or 8s and 11s. I'm gonna get started on one more berry, so I'm gonna repeat that process in the middle, the in between. Right. So there's my middle beads. That's the beads in between. The core is 3 size 8s, and I'm going to go ahead and build the first rib. I can do this all in one step, which will speed your day along considerably.
Oh, thanks.
And I'm going to go up again through the 8s. Getting that needle going through. Pull it around. And I'm ready for the next rib.
So we have a few questions on sizing. Could you use 6/0 and 8/0?
Yes, you'd get considerably bigger berries.
Okay. Raquel says outdoor use 6 and 8s too. Sorry, you could not outdoor. Never mind. I guess I don't know what she's trying to say.
Okay.
Something about 6 and 8s also.
All right. Okay. So this just continues. Lather, rinse, repeat. On and on, as long as you want this to be.
Cool.
But there is going to be a point where you're going to run out of thread. And this happens in every seed bead project. Almost everyone. There's 1 or 2 where you only need 1 piece of thread. But it comes a time where you have to change your threads. And it shouldn't be a scary prospect. I also tend to do it when I have to lean over to get to the beads. When my thread gets too short, it's actually harder. So I will be generous with my thread. Thread is inexpensive in comparison to beads and a lot of other things. So I don't mind having a little extra thread to tie on and off, and that seems to make life happen a little easier. Okay, so I'm going to move on from this particular one.
Okay.
And just like the magic of television, right? Like you do when you're watching a cooking show, they're going to have another one. Here's the second one.
So what's different with this one?
This one I'm going to say I need to add thread.
Oh, okay. And
Okay.
also the stopper bead is not there?
Stopper bead is a
still
different
there.
color.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Still there. Still there. I'm going to pretend at this point that I'm going to assume I need to add thread.
Okay.
And I would add thread at this stage of the game when I've finished a berry and before I go on to the next one. Okay? So I'm going to get a piece of thread, same as I did the last time, and a new needle. So this is my second needle. Okay? Want to see that threading trick again?
Yes.
I thought you might. So I'm going to see the dot of thread. I'm going to push the needle down onto the thread, and I'm pushing it in between my fingers, and I can feel it travel in between my fingers. Right? Pull the thread through gently, and again I'm going to give it a bit of a tug to flatten out and relax all those curls. So to add thread in this case, I'm going to ignore my old thread, and I'm going to start a new thread. Now typically I'd be a little further along than this. I'd have a few more berries. Maybe I'd have 3 or 4 or 5. So I'm going to take my needle and thread, and I'm going to bring it through one berry below the one I'm stopped on, okay? And I want to push my needle and thread through, and I can see it coming through the core, and sometimes that's a little bit of a tight fit, but that's all right. And I'm going to pull the thread up till just a little bit of the tails are showing, okay? I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to pass it under one of the ribs of the thread. See it? So if you were sewing on a button on your shirt, that taking that little mini stitch would be the same thing you would do to start to secure a thread. I need about 2 knots to make this secure. Here's another trick I learned from my mom when sewing. Make the loop small before you stick the needle through. Less tangling that way. Put my needle through that loop. Right? And I'm going to pull up firmly. Now, I'm going to go up a few beads in the chain that's in between the berry and the beads. Come out, and I just happen to come out at that 8. Pull my thread through. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing by going around the thread that's in the beads. So I went just below it. Stick my needle through. That knot is gone. It's hiding in there. I'm going to continue with my thread and come right out through the berry. And here's the acid test. I'm going to give that a little tug. As hard as I can. And that new thread did not move. It's completely stuck in there now. So now I have a new thread.
Awesome.
And what happens to thread number 1, needle number 1? It's just going to hang out there for a little bit. Because I'm going to build 2 new berries. And I'm going to end off that thread in the same way. So then my threads are overlapping one another. And they don't have any room for movement. Okay? So, remember that beads in between here? We're going to have 2 yellow turquoise Picasso, 1 blue turquoise Picasso, 1, 2, 3 beads for the core, and my first rib, 1, 2.
I'm just going to shout out really quick.
Do it.
I want to thank everyone for sharing our video. We've had 5 shares.
Oh, awesome.
I really appreciate those shares.
Yeah. I love it. Passing through, pulling it up snug. And, you know, doing a demonstration like this and teaching this kind of style, it's really nice because this particular piece has lots of repeats. So I know that you're getting lots of exposure here to this particular stitch and how it works. And it's kind of related to some other stitches that we're going to do. Kate and Janice are giving me the opportunity to have a week every month to do a different seed bead stitch. We're really going to focus on those, learning those stitches, and we're going to call that week Seed Bead School. So you're going to get a chance to be reminded to get your needles and threads together, and maybe you can do it with us online while it's happening live, or you can actually do it later with Janice's episode notes. It'll just be about a stitch that we'd love you to learn so that you can make something with it, okay? And then we'll be featuring projects and as we go along, so you'll get some other chances to use them. We have spiral rope coming up real soon. It's very similar to this, but with a completely different look. And I'll make sure that there's some photos online for everybody to look at. And the amounts and things of beads that you'll need to start something off for yourself. You can make bracelets or necklaces, all those things. But we'll do peyote stitch and brick stitch, and we'll really have a good time with that. I really love working with seed beads. They are like little dots of color. And one more berry, real quick here. And then we'll tie off that old thread, and we'll be working with the new thread only. So we'll have gotten rid of it. Then we'll move on to putting a clasp, making a clasp for this particular one. Okay. And you know, I would suspect your first one of these that you might make, it might take you maybe 3 hours if you've never worked with seed beads before. If you've got a little bit of seed bead experience, maybe a couple hours of work, but a pretty simple project. It's not a lot to take along with you if you need to take it on a summer vacation or camping, or you know, you're going to the beach and you want to have a little something to do and you're taking a break from reading a book or picking up shells. It's a fun little stitch.
A lot of people love the idea of seed bead school, and a lot of people are intimidated, and some people are already bead weavers, so they're happy that it's going to happen. I personally am excited for seed bead school because I don't know how to bead weave.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's 2 types of bead weaving, and one is loom weaving, so like Kate likes to do with her loom or on the tray, and the other is off loom weaving. And so off loom weaving just covers everything but loom weaving. And I know Kate's just so excited about her new looming kits. And I like looming as well. I'll show you some of my big projects that I've done with the bead loom. And we'll do some fun stuff with that too. But there are lots and lots of processes we can do without a loom. So,
Cool.
Here we are, moving right along. This is our new thread coming out over here. Okay. Our old thread languishes back here. So we need to deal with that old thread, right? I'm going to take my old thread and finish it off very similarly to how I did the new thread. I'm actually going to pick a rib, pass my needle under the thread of the rib, pull the thread through. Remember that small loop here? Bring your needle through, pull it up nice and snug, and I'm going to come through a few beads. Oh, this time I came out between the two 11s. That's all right. Anywhere up that chain would be fine.
They're pretty large holes.
They are, compared to sort of what you think. Yeah, absolutely. And again, that half hitch sort of style stitch by going under the beads and bringing my needle through the loop. So if you had a really long thread, can you imagine how unwieldy this would be? You'd be spending a lot of time kind of making sure you didn't get tangled up. And I'm going to just bring my thread straight up here through that next berry. So remember when I started adding this thread, I came in at the bottom and I had that tail of thread. I've really found that if you try and clip threads really close to the knots, you end up with these little bits sticking out, and they're not so pleasant. You could use a thread burner here to remove the thread, extra thread. I find thread snips work pretty well, and I'm just going to come right in here nice and close with my thread snip and clip off the tails, and I'm going to very carefully clip off old thread. So now I just have one needle and thread attached.
Awesome.
Right? So now I'm back on track to continue with the project.
I have a few comments and questions.
Good.
Geeta wants to know if you use glue in the half hitch knots. Emily, she guesses not.
Nope.
You're shaking your head no.
In this case, we don't really need it.
Okay. Well, they look really secure from what I'm seeing. Joanne says, started with the seed bead crochet, got hooked, but boom. Jaria says that she was really lucky to work with a couple of really great seed beater ladies, and she's really pumped up about it. Faye says her second and third berries are beautiful. Her first is somewhat awkward.
Well, I have a rule of thumb about off-loom weaving. It's very typical that the first few rows or the first few bits that you do look a little bit like a drowned cat, a little bedraggled and not so perfect. That's okay. Just keep going. It gets better. Your tension gets more secure. You get more rhythmical about what you're doing.
Ginger wants to know, the longer the core beads, the longer the berry?
Correct.
Okay. Bead weaver 2. Let me see. And then I guess that's it for now.
All
Sorry.
Right. All right, that's good. I'm going to go on to finishing this bead, this last bead to make the berry clasp, the button clasp, and then going back and making a loop at the other end. And I'm just going to use the sample I'm working with right here.
Sorry, there's another question. If you were going to just make one bead for an earring, how would you anchor the ends so they don't fall apart? Would you weave through it?
What you're going to see right now.
Oh, sweet. There we go.
So if I was going to make just one beaded berry, okay, Janice, I know I'm drawing again. If I was going to make just one beaded berry for an earring, and I'm gonna, oops, that should have been a smaller guy. I'm gonna just sort of fake it here, okay? This is as if we're looking at the side of one beaded berry. So here's my groups of 5, the thread comes through, and I have my thread coming out in this way, okay? I can actually use one end to make a stopper and the other end to make a little loop, and then just slip it right on an ear wire, okay? And that's really all you needed to do. You could actually do several berries. 3 berries in a row would make a really cute little earring, right? So that's another way to go. But when I show you how to do the loop and the button for the clasp, you would just do it with as many few berries in between as you want to make an earring.
And Nancy's asking, could you be bold and use a 15-aught?
Nancy, you're such a brave girl. Yes, you could use a 15-aught. You might end up using, on the burying part of this, you might end up using 3 15s on either side of that 8. You could even try a 15, 2 11s, an 8, 2 11s, and a 15.
Kate wrote, "That's just crazy talk, Nancy."
Yeah.
Hashtag where are my glasses?
Well, I said before that, you don't necessarily have to be able to see what you're doing to pick up beads. And that's very true. So I'm going to move away from these greens so that I can show you the clasp with a color that's a little bit different.
Okay.
And this will just make it a little easier for you to see what's happening. That's all. But here's my technique. Here's my volcano, right? I talked about that before, kind of a hill of beads. I'm going to scoot my needle through. I can close my eyes. Grace will tell you my eyes are closed.
They are closed.
And I'm picking up beads, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to do that. And in fact, it's not a bad idea when you pick up beads that you take a look at the beads when you pick them up on the needle. So these beads are white, size 11, Japanese-made seed beads. Let me pick up a few black size 11s for you to look at, just kind of side by side,
Sure.
just for kicks. And I'm going to pick up one problem child that I found over here too. You can see what the difference might be. So can you see the difference in size between the 11s, size 11 white, and the black?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty apparent that these beads have a slightly different length. And yet these would actually be considered the same size bead. Okay? In this case, for what we're doing today, and in most seed bead stitches where there are not side-by-side rows of beads, so bead looming, peyote stitch, those few stitches, if those are happening, this shape change or size change may make a difference. But for most of our seed bead things, this is going to be fine. We don't have to worry about this. But look at this little problem child down here on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see how he's a radically different shape? So he's actually not a good bead. He's a bad bead. Nothing really wrong with that. It's not his fault that he's a bad bead. But in the manufacturing process, he got a little misshapen. And most of the time, this would be a bead that I would not work with.
Got it.
Okay? If I was stringing, it might not make a big difference. But for the most part, in weaving or looming, that kind of bead is going to give you more heartbreak than happiness. Okay? It's a bad boyfriend bead, you cut it off and move on.
Oh my gosh.
You ever heard that one before?
No.
Oh, I got a million of them.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, bad boyfriend bead. Yeah, cut them off and move on. Okay?
Ginger said that's a soup bead.
Yes.
And then Joanne says, poor little bead. And Geeta says, he's a black sheep.
And they'll come in every color. Don't worry.
That's so funny.
All right. So I'm going to make a small picot on the end of this bead to make it into a stopper.
Can you lay it flat?
Sure. So my hand doesn't shake so much.
No.
So picot is this little guy here at the end. It's 1 size 8 bead and 3 size 11s. Picot is P-I-C-O-T. Picot. You'll see it a lot in knitting and crochet. And it's just a little decorative blip at the end.
Got it.
Okay? You could do just 1 bead if you wanted there, but why not make it more decorative? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take, and again, I'm going to do this in black and white so that they're a little bit easier to see. I'm going to pick up 1 size 8 bead, and I'm going to pick up 3 size 11s. Slide those down. And I'm going to pass through the 8 again. And in doing so, I'm going to pass through the whole berry.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And as I pull this up, sometimes you have to give it a little mush, it makes a little picot at the end, a little pyramid.
That was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Great, huh?
Yeah.
So what do you think I do with this long thread that's hanging out here with
Leave
this
it
needle
on
on
through?
it? I tie it off just the way we did before.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to pick up a rib. Thank goodness for ribs, huh? sling that needle through, pull it up, pass through a few beads, and that little half hitch. You know, there are actually a few seed bead stitches where we don't actually use knots at all.
Really?
No knots. No glue, no knots. It's like magic.
Mm.
Go through here.
Drea says that Janice and she had ribs last night for dinner, so the talk about ribs is making her hungry.
Excellent. So I did 2 knots. I'm all golden, and I'm going to trim off that extra thread. Okay. Put my pin needle in my pin cushion. All right. Now, I'm going to go to the other end.
Gita writes, spare ribs, anyone?
Spare ribs. Short ribs. We need a loop on the other end. Okay. And what's hanging out on the end of that loop?
Picot.
Picot, because we can, right? Why not?
Right.
Right? Make it as fun as we can. So I'm going to use some beads, and I have a thread here, but no needle. Ruh-roh. Ruh-roh. What do you think might happen here? I'm going to come down here and trim those threads off even. I'm going to do the same process I did before.
With both or one?
Both.
Works.
Works. Slick, huh?
Let's see. Trudy says, and if you don't pass through the knot loop twice, better to secure the no. The knot. Sorry.
Okay. Actually, I made a mistake.
We did?
No one stopped me.
What?
What is hanging out right here?
Stop bead.
Take that needle off. So, I'm going to pull that stopper bead out. I just get in there with my thumbnail, grab the stopper bead, slide him off.
Oh, it just comes off.
Yeah, save it for another time.
Okay.
Okay? So you have to watch me work that magic again with the threads, huh?
Oh, Kate's off to bead and button.
Travel safe, Kate. Have some beer in Milwaukee. So I have to tell you that threading needles is a practice. Just like yoga, which I don't do very well. Some of you probably do great yoga, and I don't. So practice with your threading your needles, and it will get better. I know it's hard the first couple times.
Tell us again why you're using double thread for beads.
I'm using double thread in this case because every time we finish off these berries and we make an extension, a bit of straight beading in between, a single thread is not going to be strong enough. So in this case, we're using double thread for durability. Most of the time in seed beading, we go through all the beads more than once. And so there's multiple threads through them. But in this case, we'd mostly only be passing through these once. Now when we go to add a thread, we go through it again, but that's not going to be through the whole thing. Okay? So double thread is much stronger than single thread. I think I said this the last time we talked about thread for crochet. If you have doubts about your thread, try and break a strand of it and see what happens. Okay? That's usually a good way to let you know what the strength is like, and it'll allow you to assess what you need. So double thread in this case is a lot stronger. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to start out by picking up some beads. And again, I'm doing this in a different color just so you can see. Oh, scoot, scoot, scoot. Scoot, scoot, scoot. How many beads? Some.
You don't measure like to how large, like an inch?
Not yet.
Okay, so just for now it's...
Some beads. Maybe this is 3/4 of an inch-ish, getting on that way. But you can see that I probably have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, about 28 beads on there.
Okay.
And right now I've got 5, 10, 14, 17. So I'm going to scoot on some more. So every time you make a beaded berry chain, you may actually have to adjust this loop size because the beads that you make the berry with may change how big this loop needs to be. So I would make the loop second. I do the picot on the other end first, and I do that loop second. So what I want to see is how that loop will fit over a berry. And I think that loop is too large. So I'm going to slide off about 4. I can put my needle right back up them.
And they'll just pop off.
They'll just pop right off.
Nice.
Right? So let's try that again. Make that little loop of thread. See if my berry will fit through there. And I kind of like a snug fit. Janice and I can have a conversation about that later. But a little bit of stretch from the thread over some time is pretty much to be expected. So if I put this bracelet on and take it off a bunch of times, my loop gets a little bit bigger. Then I've prepared for that. So a tightish fit here is probably what I'm really kind of after. And that looks pretty good.
Quick question again
Sure.
about Wildfire and Fireline. You would double it?
Yes.
She says it seems very wrong.
Yes, I would double it.
Okay.
Yeah, I find that it's just stronger that way. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
So I've established I have enough beads here. Remember, these are white beads, which are a little smaller than my other beads typically. So they actually might be fewer or more beads here than I would have had in my other loop. Okay.
She meant strong, not wrong.
Oh, it's super strong. So to make this into a loop, back down the berry. Now this one actually has a knot on it because this is where I began to add my new thread. So I might have a hard time. Oh no, there we go.
Vanessa's interested in making a berry eyeglass leash.
Oh, it would be a great one. I would do it with a fairly small amount of space in between the berries. So maybe just a few beads, like 2 or 3. Or even just 8s entirely. I think it would be happier, feel more secure if it was more solid. I'm trying to get through here without coming through a bead. Let's see if I can.
Is there a reason?
Yes.
I know there's a reason, but
course
I'm
there's
wondering
a reason.
what the reason is. I think I asked the wrong question.
No,
I asked the wrong question. I just asked a question.
You can never ask the wrong question. I want to use one of the ribs to tie off on.
Okay.
So I really want to come right out next to that guy. Let's see if I can get this needle, pull this needle through. My hands are a little slippery.
Sometimes I use pliers. There's some in there.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to though. I have a real issue with using pliers for the wrong thing.
Oops.
Yeah. If you go through too many threads, you can actually break your beads from the inside. So if you're really struggling to get that needle through, there's a reason that might be a bit struggly. Okay? But I have a trick for this.
That
Don't
actually
you worry.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to go ahead and grab one of those ribs. You're going to see now how splendid these ribs are too. Go through the loop, tie a half hitch. All right? So, no picot. Did we forget?
No.
No, we didn't forget. I would never forget.
This needle is a 12.
It is. I'm going to use the rib because I had a hard time getting through that berry. I'm going to use the rib to let me come back up again. All right? Sneaky. Sneaky. Right up through the chain of beads, the strand of beads, till I get to about the halfway point. You know, if you have an even number of beads, you're going to have a little bit of a different shape here, but I've kind of got a halfway point with one bead in the middle. And I'm going to make a picot again. I'll do it with funner colors this time. I'm making it the same picot
cool.
that I did at the other end. And I actually like to do that again going down, and I'm just going to skip a bead in the middle. All right? So that picot has a place to sit.
Cool.
Okay. I'm going to go down, pop out at the base, the last bead. Tie off on one of the rib threads. Getting down to that last little bit of thread. And I'm going to go through one of those ribs again, down to the bottom of the berry. And pick up that thread loop. All these knots and things you've been seeing, none of them show, right? So making sure that your knots don't show and your thread is as invisible as possible is a good call here. What you might find, if you're going to try and sew up a little sample, is that you might want to use a contrasting color of thread, something that does show, so you can kind of keep track of where things are. And just to hide this tail of thread, I'm going to pop down a few beads here, because again, cutting off that thread right next to the knot tends to give you a little nub that sticks out and never will go away. Slide that needle off.
Quick question.
Sure.
Oh, you're done. There you go. The question was, is it better to have an odd or even number of beads in the loop?
In the rib?
I think in this loop that you just finished here.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Make that loop fit. That's more important.
Bead.
Yeah. So that's a good fit.
Got it. Cool.
Cool. So let me show you these other little samples in the black and white. And they show some other patterning choices that you might play around with. And you can really clearly see the thread that's going through the berry beads in the middle, the core beads, how each one kind of comes out. And I do make a little bit of effort to keep things kind of straight here. In other words, each rib sitting next to the next one. That tends to maximize the whole space that I have inside. Here's another. I did another one of kind of some brighter white beads on the inside, so you can see where that red thread is now. That's a good way to kind of play around with this a little bit.
These are examples of patterning that you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just some other choices and some other looks. So these would be earrings. Could be earrings.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Picot on one end, loop on the other, ear wire, bam.
Did you do other patterns in the other colorways?
The other colorways have their own pattern on each one, and I can show you those in a little closer detail. So here's the Chloe, and here's my little pointer. So it has a kind of a yellowish turquoise Picasso, a very simple kind of Kelly green, and a blue Picasso. So the blue Picasso is the 8. It's on the inside. There's a Kelly green, a yellow Picasso, a blue Picasso, a yellow Picasso, a Kelly green as the rib. Okay. I used some blue Picasso 8s on the outside there, and yellow Picasso for the strap. And going in between the beads, yellow Picasso, blue Picasso side by side.
I see.
Okay.
Was it a similar pattern for the other ones?
Yeah, they're all
different.
They all have different colors.
Well, true.
But the pattern is pretty much the same.
I see.
I did try to pick whatever color my 8 was. I tried to pick the contrasting color to go next to it in the rib, just so it would make that 8 kind of pop out a little bit. And I kept to a similar color, the end of the berries and the spacing beads in between. I used the same color there, again, to emulate a beaded strand or a thread with a knot here. Right? So it has a little bit of a story to it, but it can be very subtle, and you can make it as bright or bold or subtle as you like. Okay. These have a little matte metal bead here, which I really like, and they're pretty interesting. I like them a lot. And white alabaster.
Nice.
Right? And then this beautiful one that's the Bella. This reminds me of a Moulin Rouge dancer outfit. Look how beautiful that is. So this I did a dark, medium to light. So it kind of gives it a little bit of an ombre effect onto the bead.
Could you use bead mixes?
Oh, sure.
You can just make it random even?
You could make it random if you wanted.
Cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
Cool.
All right.
So,
we can go there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may want to show off these
oh, yes.
palettes again.
Actually, do you mind holding it?
No, not at all.
Walk around.
So we have a little bit of business still to conclude. We have today's Facebook giveaway live, which is going to be very nice. And you guys are going to be excited about it. I can't wait to have you get yours. So, with ordering before 1 p.m. today.
Which we've extended because we had
extended. Yep.
So until 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Okay. So we have an extra hour because of our technical difficulties this morning. Seed Bead Essentials will get you a spool of a light gray KO thread and a 4-pack of needles. These are John James beading needles. They are the standard made in England. Wonderful beading needle. Really good that it's in that package, nice and tight, not going anywhere. And I like gray as my, it's kind of my neutral thread color. You know, it's probably the thread color I use the most. If I'm going to work with light colored beads, anything that's transparent or semi-transparent or color lined that's a light color, gray is a great basic. If you have black, white, gray, purple, mauve, and a few other colors, you're pretty well set. I do like having the whole rainbow of colors whenever I can get a chance to have it. So this is just a great starter kit. So it's Seed Bead Essentials. We'll get you that in your order. Okay. And there's another Facebook Live excitement coming your way, and I'm so glad this is happening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making my maiden voyage without Kate and without Janice by my side.
You did great.
To be very successful. You have a 20% discount off on beads and buttons. So any bead, any button you can find on our site is 20% off. Bead 20 is the coupon code that you're going to have to put in your coupon code box. Okay?
That's
this
what's
is
going to
go
get
in
it
the
for
notes.
you. Right. But as a reminder, the Bead 20 goes until Friday the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do that today, tomorrow, or the next day. But if you order today,
you get
before 2, yeah.
So there's no Facebook Free Tip Friday this week because Kate is traveling. She may call in from Bead and Button. When I say may, she will. You know. You're going to get to see her, don't worry. And I hope she takes you on a little tour of the marketplace floor.
Totally.
Because it's so exciting. And Meet the Teachers also on Friday night it's like there's a wave when they open the door and they let people in. It's amazing. So it's a pretty cool thing to see. So we have Bead 20, Seed Bead Essentials for your 2 in your notes and in the coupon codes, two things today.
All right. Well, Emily, thank you. Everyone's saying you're a seasoned teacher. You did wonderful. You're looking so pretty, too. And a lot of love. And thank you, everyone, again, for watching.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.